Contemporary Jews. After slashing her throat, he rinsed the blood from the buster sword in a stainless steel sink and waited for her to die. It didn't take long. He had cut her exactingly, deeply, down to the spine, and she dashed around the kitchen for half a minute like a chicken on fire, blood exiting her neck hole in thick, oily spurts. Finally, she ran into a wall, threw her arms into the air, made a noise that sounded like a lawnmower running over a football, and collapsed into a quivering lump. The lump stopped quivering. He removed a quill from an inner pocket of his overcoat, knelt down, poked a hole in a clean patch of skin, watched it bleed, watched a small red pool expand across the floor tiles, and dabbed the tip of the quill in the blood. He changed his mind, put the quill away, and took out a paintbrush. He gathered some blood in a shot glass, stood, and wrote his name on the wall, Mr. Blankety Blank. By the time I'm done with this reading, I'm going to be sweating bullets. I should have brought a towel. He admired the lettering, refining and touching it up in places. Satisfied, he sprayed Windex on his head and squeak cleaned it with a paper towel, and he left. Quote, "Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left." Charles Manson, cult leader. A gleaming rollerball truck souped up with razor wire antennae, scores of shark fins, and edible vegicarbon tires squealed down Buttrick Avenue and claimed the lives of over 20 peregrinating animals, among them Siamese cats, wiener dogs, blue racers, skunks, and raccoons. The roadkill lay untouched for hours before the children came home from school and began to play with it. They lit the more mangled corpses on fire. They picked up the other corpses by their tails and swung them over their heads like helicopter blades, till they grew tired and passed out in a heap of young hairless limbs, or their acid-lipped mothers or Mr. Moms called them inside for dinner. Dusk surged down the rooftops and flooded the streets. Steam hissed from the roadkill, which grew cold, hard, bloodless. And then he stole across the street, overcoat flapping, head glowing and spinning. The roadkill grew warm, soft, oozing undead sap. Quote, "Carcasses bleed at the sight of the murderer, Robert Burton, Vicar." Myrtle Underlay opened her eyes and looked at the clock, 9 p.m. Who rang the doorbell? Was it Halloween already? She looked over her shoulder. Her husband was dusting the epic bicep of a giant thinker statue in the corner of the family room. "Who's at the door?" she asked. Herman winced. "Dunno, I haven't been to the door." This doesn't make any sense. Myrtle told her chair to stand up. Two mechanical legs sprung out of the arms. The chair stiffened and clumsily angled upwards, unloading Myrtle onto her feet. She nearly fell down. She thwacked the chair with a jockey whip that she always kept close by her side, then strode across the room and thwacked her husband for no particular reason, and shouted at her identical triplet sisters in kitchenette number 2. "What's going on in there? Is that popcorn done or what? Why do you bitches always exclude me? It's not my fault I don't look like you. Get your asses out here." "Hold on," one of the sisters hollered distantly. "Charlotte's walking on her hands." "Somebody's at the door." Myrtle wondered again if it was Halloween. It was October, she knew that. Late October. Had she forgotten Halloween again? Same thing happened last year. Kids started ding-donging and she didn't have any candy to shell out. So she gave children slices of Kraft cheese, and when the supply dried up, she handed out frozen dinners and miniature bottles of sparkling water. Rumor of her absent-mindedness spread across Quiggle Estates, and she had to endure the underhanded ridicule of her neighbors for a full year, where she's staring another year of petty bullshit in the face. The question could have been answered by her husband. She was too angry at him to ask, though. Why was she angry at him? She couldn't remember. She might also go into the kitchen and ask her sisters, or she could turn on the TV and watch the calendar channel, or she could answer the front door and see who rang the doorbell. If there were children wearing costumes, it was probably Halloween, unless the children were merely practicing for Halloween, of course, which Myrtle herself used to do. But if some costumeless person rang the doorbell, she may have been in the clear, although not necessarily, on the off chance that a child or group of children, for instance, were dressed up as quote-unquote normal children, and their costumes consisted of no costumes, as normal clothes and hairdos. But maybe the doorbell hadn't rung in the first place. She had been half asleep after all. Maybe the ring she heard, if she heard a ring, had occurred in a hypnagogic dream. No way to tell. Actually, there were multiple truth-telling strategies available to her, but which tactic would be the most effective? Ding-dong. So it wasn't a dream. Somebody was actually at the door, unless, that is, her ears had played another trick on her. She eyeballed Herman. The doorbell. Sometimes it rings, she said. Herman squeezed behind the thinker statue. He rubbed and massaged the statue's bronze shoulders as if it were a boxer about to enter the ring. Sometimes it rings, he confirmed. I asked you a question, dumbass. Myrtle stomped the floor. Herman cowered, arguing that she didn't ask him a question. On the contrary, she made a statement. Myrtle stormed across the room and whipped him again. Most of the blows fell on the statue. She went into kitchenette number 2. Charlotte was still walking on her hands. She scurried around the vast granite countertop of an island sink with legs hanging over her head like two meaty antennae as her look-alike sisters, Berlin and Sonia, half-heartedly cheered her on. Get off that counter, Myrtle shrieked. Land's sakes, your hands are filthy. Look at those filthy hands. I washed them 2 seconds ago, Charlotte replied as she negotiated a hulking stainless steel canister of sugar. Her sisters endorsed the claim with exaggerated wide-eyed nods. Crouching, Myrtle leapt at Charlotte with cat-like agility. She missed her target by a wide margin. Everybody watched her sail across kitchenette number 2 into the pantry closet. The door slammed shut behind her. There was a great crash of canned goods. The door opened and Myrtle walked out dripping in chicken noodle soup. She cursed. She whipped the pantry door. She asked her sisters if they had heard the doorbell. Doorbell, they said, frowning at one another as if the word was a neologism Myrtle had just invented. The doorbell rang again, far away, but audible. There it is, Myrtle pointed. Don't tell me you didn't hear that. Did you invite somebody over? It's Halloween, Berlin lied. We came over to celebrate with you. Why would we invite somebody over? Sonia smacked her lips. Charlotte tumbled off the counter and said, Did you forget Halloween again? No, Myrtle said defensively. She tried to whip her sisters. They knew her style, though, and expertly dodged and deflected her fly swats. Psychotic with frustration, Myrtle retrieved a can of mushroom soup from the pantry. She sprinted to the front door, opened it, and threw the can at the figure standing on the porch. She missed. The can flew across her front lawn and nailed the mailbox, knocking it off its perch. Holy crap, she shouted. I couldn't do that again if I tried. Mr. Blankety Blank glanced over his shoulder, then back at Mrs. Underlay. But you didn't. Myrtle made a face. Mr. Blankety Blank ripped her face off with a pair of monofilament Kruger claws. 10 minutes later, he clicked shut the Underlay's screened-in porch, 5 faces neatly tucked into a satchel.